Hey there, and welcome back to Utility Sports. We have a really fun NFL mock draft, a full first round. For all of you that are viewers, we do appreciate your support. So that's why we are doing a jersey giveaway. Justin Fields, Chicago Bears jersey giveaway. It's embroidered. It's a really, really awesome collectible piece. So if you are interested, here's how you can win. You have to be subscribed to the channel. You have to comment on this video and also leave a like on this video in order to enter in this Justin Fields jersey giveaway. So make sure you do that. Now, hopping into the mock draft. With the first overall pick, we have the Detroit Lions, a team that has had a lot of heartbreaking losses. They've been competitive so far this year, and also they've had some other games where you really have to scratch your head at the direction of the team. But Sheldon, at number one, how are you feeling? Is this a quarterback-oriented pick, or are we going to be looking to fix the defensive side of the ball?
I'm sure there's a real divide among Lions fans, specifically when you look at the quarterback position. Dan Campbell this past week had kind of called out Jared Goff and said that they need a little bit more from him this season. They've been in close games, just haven't been able to close the door on any of them yet, as they said at 0-7. So I'm sure some fans are looking at that QB spot. However, just with where this team is at, I think they have to go best player available. That's Kayvon Thibodeau here out of Oregon. On the year, he has 7.5 tackles, 4 sacks in only 4 games. He's been phenomenal. Was on a great start to the season before an injury kind of sidelined him for a little while. Kayvon Thibodeau, the obvious pick here for me for Detroit. I think he's the best player in the class.
Moving on to number 2, we have the Houston Texans. Once again, we have a question of direction for this franchise. The whole Deshaun Watson rumors are swirling right now as we approach the NFL trade deadline. Where do you think the best approach for them is to go? Like, obviously, they want to trade Deshaun Watson, so do you think they end up getting a quarterback back in a Deshaun Watson trade, or do you think they'll select one here?
Here at pick 2, I'm operating with the idea that the Houston Texans are going to have their franchise quarterback on the roster. My thought is Tua Tagovailoa is going to be the quarterback next season for the Houston Texans in a Deshaun Watson trade. Therefore, I'm going with best player available at a very needed position there in Houston. That is Derek Stingley here, cornerback out of LSU. He is the best athlete in this class, in my opinion. He moves his hips phenomenally, great man coverage, and he had a phenomenal freshman season for the LSU Tigers back in 2019 when they won it all. That season had 6 interceptions, had a ton of pass deflections. Hasn't had that same level of production since that year, but the film still shows great coverage skills, and that's really where the NFL's at right now. Cornerbacks need to be able to cover one-on-one, and Derek Stingley does it better than anyone in this class.
Unfortunately, injuries have ended his season at LSU, but that doesn't really scare you away from taking him at the number 2 overall spot. At number 3, we have the Philadelphia Eagles, and this is via Miami. So the Eagles did very, very well in their last draft. Looking at this pick and what's on the board, are you pretty confident on what direction they should go with it?
Right. I think the Eagles are fairly shocked that this pick is in the top 3 currently. I don't think anyone expected Miami to be 1-6 after week 7 of the NFL season. However, sitting here, they're getting the top player at a position where there is a huge drop-off, in my opinion. And that, of course, is Kyle Hamilton here out of Notre Dame. Very rangy safety, has 3 interceptions this season, 2 tackles for loss as well, 34 tackles. He's all around the field, can play at all 3 levels that you need to as a safety, can get in behind the line of scrimmage in the run game. Also very, very aptitude in pass coverage. I think he's a very, very well-rounded safety, and I think he's a phenomenal grab here for Philadelphia secondary.
He is a huge building block for this defense for years to come. They have a very, very good front 4 for sure, but on the back half of that defense, you really need to see some improvement, and that's a great start by selecting Kyle Hamilton. Moving on to pick number 4, we have Jacksonville. Jacksonville had been sitting at number 1 for a lot of our mock drafts this far. They are at number 4 here. So do you think that they have to look to protect Trevor Lawrence at pick number 4?
Yeah, that is where I see them ultimately going. It's going to be Evan Neal here, tackle out of Alabama. In our other mocks, when they're picking in the top 3, we're just having them go best player available, whether that's Stingley, Thibodeau when they were at 1. There's a lot of different avenues for Jacksonville depending on where they land in the draft. Here landing at 4, grabbing a franchise tackle in Evan Neal is not a bad outcome for this team, even though they're not in the top 3. I think that Evan Neal still makes a lot of sense and something they would consider in the top 3. However, with them being at 4, it becomes the no-brainer pick for me here. You got to protect Trevor Lawrence. Gives you some flexibility with Cam Robinson, who's on the franchise tag right now. And I like that a lot for Jacksonville moving forward with Urban Meyer's team.
Yeah, I think Evan Neal could be a huge cornerstone for that offensive line and a great blindside protector for Trevor Lawrence. At pick number 5, we have the New York Jets. Very disappointing season thus far. Zach Wilson heard a pop in his knee today, so there's a lot of questions surrounding this team and where they're going to end up. They very well could end up higher in the NFL draft. So at number 5, there's some clear and obvious needs on this defensive side of the ball. Is that kind of the direction you're looking, or do you need to help aid the development of Zach Wilson?
With having 2 first-round picks here, one from Seattle, this pick ourselves, I think that you have to start defense here for Robert Saleh's team. Hired a defensive-minded head coach. You need to improve on that side of the ball. And I am a Jets fan, so there is a lot riding on this pick, in my opinion. Mixed reviews so far about Zach Wilson, his early start to his career. I'm hoping he's healthy moving forward so we can see a little bit more out of him his rookie season. That's yet to be determined. But pick 5 here, this is a little bit different than what you've been mocking here, Austin. And for those of you very familiar with our channel, you'll notice that I'm actually mocking here this time, which is going to lead to some shakeups. And this, I think, is one of the biggest ones. Ahmad Gardner out of Cincinnati is the selection here, the cornerback from the Bearcats. I think he's a phenomenal one-on-one, man-to-man cornerback. You see, he's not ranked as high here on PFF. However, I'm a big-time believer in his skill set at that cornerback position. In 890 coverage, man-to-man cover snaps at the University of Cincinnati, he has allowed 0 passing touchdowns to his man-to-man cover. That is elite man-to-man cover skills. Maybe he doesn't have all the athletic physical traits that some of the other corners do in the top, but I think when it comes down to real talent and man-to-man coverage, Ahmad Gardner is almost as good as it gets in this year's draft.
In Robert Saleh's scheme, it's really important to have good man cover corners, and that's what Ahmad Gardner brings to this team. A guy that is definitely being slept on in these pre-draft rankings as well. And now we shift over to the other New York team. We have the New York Giants. A lot of struggles so far this season. People were not expecting them to tumble out of the gate as bad as they have. They've had some injuries. How can you kind of fix this team? How can Dave Gettleman right the wrong that we've seen so far with this squad?
Getting a win today was huge for this team. I think that there's still opportunities for them to climb a little bit more this season. However, that early start is going to limit where they can really get to. And a big question mark has been the play of Leonard Williams and James Bradbury playing on massive contracts. I think those two can get right, and they're going to build onto that with Aiden Hutchinson here on the defense. This year alone, he has, in 7 games, 6.5 tackles for loss, 5 sacks, and playing for a really, really good Michigan Wolverine program. They're ranked 6th in the nation right now, and I think he gives them a very nice dynamic on that defensive line. They lost Dalvin Tomlinson in the offseason. They need someone who can help them in the run game along that defensive front, and I think it's really good value grabbing him 6th overall here.
Aiden Hutchinson has been a huge riser, especially since the start of the year. This is a guy that we thought would maybe go at the back end of that first round. He has ascended all the way to pick number 6 in this mock, so really impressive rise for Aiden Hutchinson. At pick number 7, we have the Philadelphia Eagles once again. You took Kyle Hamilton with the last selection. Do you think defense, and in particular the secondary, could be an option?
I think they have to continue looking into the secondary. I know their cornerback play hasn't been absolutely terrible this year. Darius Slay's made some nice plays for them. However, looking for the long term of this franchise, they need to continue improving in that secondary. And I have them going with Kaiir Elam here, Austin. I know that's been a popular pick of your own. I have 3 cornerbacks going in the top 7 in this very, very strong cornerback class. Kaiir Elam, you put him next to Kyle Hamilton in the secondary, you're getting a lot of defensive playmaking ability. Kaiir Elam, very good physical traits, and had 11 passes defense as well last year in college football. This year hasn't had quite the season, but again, those physical traits are there. He's ascended throughout this process as well. I see him 7th overall in this draft.
At pick number 8, we have the New York Jets once again. Obviously, defense is a primary focus for Robert Saleh, and there is a terrific defender still on the board. Do you see that being the direction, or do you think they will once again dip into that offensive line and continue to build that?
Robert Saleh is going to be pleading with Joe Douglas for DeMarvin Leal to be the pick here. He can help you in that multiple front look that they provide there for the New York Jets. However, Joe Douglas is going to overrule him, tell him, hey, I already got you a member of a secondary. We already worked on the defense. We're building up that offensive line from left to right. Mekhi Becton first, Elijah Vera Tucker this past year, and now stopping at the center position with Tyler Linderbaum. He is an All-American center for the University of Iowa. They're a top 10 ranked school in the nation right now, and Linderbaum's a big reason why. He's going to help secure the Jets offensive line, and I think a key issue right now with Zach Wilson is he's struggling to identify where pass rush is going to be coming from. Bringing in a very smart center who has played meaningful games at the college level is going to help diagnose blitzes and also keep Zach Wilson upright long term.
He is a great fit for the New York Jets, and that offensive line could be looking to soon be top 5 in the entire league, and that's something that we haven't been able to say about the Jets since the early 2010 era. And now we move on to pick number 9. We have the Washington football team. A lot of questions surrounding the quarterback position. Taylor Heineke not appearing to be the long-term option. He can be that stopgate, that guy that can really bridge you. And there's a very, very electric quarterback here at number 9. Is this the direction that they are looking?
Yeah, they're going to be looking at the Liberty product here. Malik Willis. I really like what he provides at that quarterback position. This is phenomenal value. We've seen him go as high as pick 1 or pick 2 in some of our mock drafts throughout this process. And just based off the teams that we're picking, I thought that they had to look other directions. However, Malik Willis was probably my number 2 option for a lot of those teams. I see him as the top quarterback prospect in this year's class. He goes number 9 to Washington. This year, he has 17 touchdowns to 6 interceptions. Also, very dynamic, 1,900 career rushing yards, 25 career rushing touchdowns. He can do it all at the quarterback position, and Washington gets an electric quarterback to match all their electric weapons.
Now we have the Carolina Panthers, and this is kind of a fork in the road. The Panthers have to decide, is Sam Darnold going to be the quarterback? We've seen some flashes of really great play from him. And then also we've seen a little bit of New York Jets Sam Darnold as well, which is very concerning. So do you think that the Carolina Panthers are even considering quarterback here? Or do you think that that's not even at the back of their mind?
Not only are they considering quarterback, but they are regretting giving Sam Darnold that 5th-year option at this point because they are looking heavily at quarterback. It's going to be Ole Miss product, Matt Corral. I've seen the Sam Darnold show enough. I know what he is as a quarterback, and the recent shades that he's shown, the turnover-prone play that he has, is who he is. He's not getting rid of that. He's been that since he was at USC. He was that early on with the New York Jets, and he's beginning to be that again for Carolina. Quite frankly, they were better off with Teddy Bridgewater, which I can't believe I'm saying because Teddy Bridgewater doesn't have some of the skills and traits that Sam Darnold has. However, he took care of the football a lot better than Sam Darnold has. That offense has sputtered. Losing 4 straight games there is not a good look, and Matt Corral going to be the answer there for Carolina.
And once again, we have the New York Giants here at 11. This is a team that was very, very wise to move back. They did get Kadarius Toney last year, but they also picked up the Chicago first-round pick, really critical for their needs. They took Aiden Hutchinson early on in the draft. Could you see them looking on the offensive side of the ball, or do you think they'll kind of look possibly even in that secondary?
This is one of the harder picks, I think, in the first round to mock. With the Giants already addressing something on their defensive line in Aiden Hutchinson, you turn to the secondary. They've spent a lot of money there, and I really like what they have in that secondary, despite even some poor performance this year maybe. And then I like what they have along the offense for the most part too. Kadarius Toney I thought was a really good grab last year, pick 20. I thought they did such a good job moving down in that draft to get this pick from Chicago. So here I'm actually going to go look specifically at the linebacker spot because I think it's the biggest weakness on this team. And I'm going to opt for Christian Harris, who's a tackle machine. He's all around the football at all times. He's a big part in the middle of that defense there for the Alabama Crimson Tide. And I think he could come into New York, play next to Blake Martinez, and ultimately be the long-term replacement to Blake Martinez, who doesn't have a ton of time left on that contract.
Absolutely. Now we have the Indianapolis Colts, and this pick very well could be the Philadelphia Eagles. So let's operate under that idea that this is going to be going to Philly. So where do you think that the Eagles could go with their 3rd pick in the top 12?
Yeah, this is an example of the rich getting richer here with Philadelphia. I know defensive line is not a key need for them, but when you have a player as good as DeMarvin Leal out here on the board for Philadelphia, who historically loves to use their first-round picks to get great defensive line play, DeMarvin Leal is going to do that for you. This year, he has 5.5 tackles for loss and 5.5 sacks. Does it all along the defensive line. Very good in the run game. Can be productive as a pass rusher as well. Can play him inside, can play him outside. I like him a lot coming into Philadelphia. Gives you flexibility along that defensive front. You stay young, and you have 3 elite defensive products in this year's draft in Kyle Hamilton, Kyer Elam, and now DeMarvin Leal. Teams should be scared of this draft for Philadelphia.
I think that is a great value grab. Not a lot of people expect Marvin Leal to fall to that point, but if he is still there, I think that's a home run pick for them. At number 13, we have the New England Patriots. The Patriots are always hard to figure out what they're going to do in their draft. They definitely have had some reaches in the past, such as Kyle Duggar. So at the 13th pick, do you think that they are looking to get a playmaker for Mac Jones? They do have a collection of at least decent receivers as it currently stands, but is there a big time playmaker that could come out of this selection?
Wide receiver is something we've been looking at and mocking, and I think that's the way that they should go. However, with how much money they just spent on their offense and free agency, I'm actually opting to go a different direction. I'm going with George Karloftis here out of Purdue University. He is a very intriguing defensive lineman for me. His freshman season posted 17 tackles for loss. 2020 only played in 2 games there for Purdue. This year not quite having the production, but I think that freshman season is going to keep him very high in the first round with some of the production he can provide in the run game. Last year they took Christian Barmore, and I think George Karloftis, you put him in on the defensive line. New England loves to control the trenches, and I think he's going to really, really help them in that regard. You're looking at a much improved defensive front with George Karloftis coming in.
Now, George Karloftis, one of the best run defenders in the entire class. I think that's pretty evident from what we've seen so far at Purdue. At number 14, we have the Denver Broncos. Denver Broncos are having a little internal crisis themselves. Is Teddy Bridgewater the franchise guy? Is it Drew Lock? I think they're really confused at this point. I think they are probably looking at quarterback at this point, but maybe you're going to shake it up here on me.
I think quarterback is where they should be looking. However, it's just hard at this point for me to be absolutely sold that a guy right here, right now is a for sure improvement for this team. And based off the way they've operated, I actually have them going on the defensive side of the ball for Vic Fangio. I know his job's a little bit in question. Maybe he's not the head coach next season. However, with Von Miller going out with an injury on Thursday Night Football, we saw the effects of that for that defense. Dearness Johnson posted a career day, probably will never have another day like that in his NFL career. They need help along the defensive front. I'm going with Kingsley Enagbari here out of South Carolina. I think he can help them in both areas. He's had consistent production in his time at South Carolina, multiple 7-sack seasons, multiple 5+ tackle for loss years. I think that he could help them a lot along that defensive front, especially with Von Miller being in his contract season.
Yeah, the contract season is the absolute key here. So for everybody watching, he is in that contract year. So we're going to operate under the idea that they potentially move on from Von Miller. At pick number 15, we had the Kansas City Chiefs, and we definitely did not expect them to be this high in the mock at this point in the season. They've had a lot of struggles across the board, especially defensively. Do you have a pick that can kind of help these defensive woes?
I don't think that there's one pick that can really solve it. They need outside cornerback play. They need linebacker play. I think that they need a safety long-term to really take a long-term approach to roster building because Tyrann Mathieu in his contract year. There's a lot of different areas that the Chiefs need help in. I honestly think the best scenario for them would be trading down from this pick if they end up this high. We'll see if they can right some of the wrongs on their season so far. And for those of you interested, we do have a Chiefs team mock draft up on the channel, first 4 rounds. But here I'm actually going to go back, look at the linebacker spot, because I think that's really where they have to get started here. I think that they have to be better up the middle, better against the run game, and try and force teams into more passing situations. That's going to be Nakobe Dean here out of Georgia. He has been a tackle machine in his own right. We talked about that a little bit earlier with Christian Harris. He is constantly around the football in the run game, and I think he's going to help a lot. You put him next to Nick Bolton long term, you have 2 really good run stopping linebackers, and then it's about trying to develop your secondary from there.
Now, linebacker is a huge need for this Kansas City defense. Really want to replace Anthony Hitchens long term. Nakobe Dean is a great fit for them. At pick 16, we have the Pittsburgh Steelers. And the Steelers, once again, they have some questions at that quarterback spot. Is Dwayne Haskins actually going to be able to take over for Big Ben long term? That's yet to be decided, but they're very likely going to bring in another quarterback. Is that the kind of direction you're thinking here?
Yeah, I think Pittsburgh has to be looking QB here. I just don't think you can go into next season with what you have. We've seen Ben Roethlisberger has his own struggles. The guys behind him on the depth chart, I don't believe in that either. We've seen a little bit of run from both Dwayne Haskins and Mason Rudolph. And if you're believing in it, you're just not really aware of where real good NFL quarterback play is at the current moment. And that's going to be something that holds back a talented roster if those 2 guys are the quarterbacks for the next season. So here at the quarterback position, I'm actually going to look for Desmond Ridder here. He's technically not on PFF's site here. which is crazy because he's the quarterback for the second-ranked team in the nation. So the selection here is going to say Tanner McKee. It is actually Desmond Ridder from Cincinnati. He's a dual-threat quarterback. And my big reason why I'm going this way is I think they need a little bit more athleticism at that quarterback position to make up for some of the faults along this offensive line currently. I considered O-line here. However, with the need for quarterback play, you have to get someone who can alleviate some of the pressure from pass rush. I think Desmond Ridder does it here out of Cincinnati.
At pick number 17, we have the Minnesota Vikings. They've been up and down all season long, really hurting in that secondary. They have guys on one-year deals that will likely not be back next year. Rashad Breeland being one of them, Patrick Peterson being the other one. So could you see them looking into that secondary, or do you think there's another key point of emphasis that they should have going into this draft?
It's got to be secondary. Now, I know Vikings fans probably aren't excited to hear that based off of the track record that they've had with drafting first-round cornerbacks. Guys like Trey Waynes, also looking at Mike Hughes, and you have also Jeff Gladney. Not a great track record there in recent years for the first round. However, they have to come back here, grab Andrew Booth Jr. They need cornerback play bad. It's a huge part of what Mike Zimmer likes to do defensively. And looking at Booth Jr. here, he's a prototypical size corner at 6 feet tall. Hasn't had a ton of production yet. However, the physical traits are there, and with some coaching, I think he can get there and be a solid number one cornerback in the NFL.
At pick number 18 here, we have the Miami Dolphins in that swap with the 49ers. Now, the Miami Dolphins have had a disastrous season thus far, once again losing again. Looking at this team, this was a group of guys that you thought could make a postseason run, but unfortunately, it just hasn't been that way. This was supposed to be that hot rebuilding team that was going to get there quickly. A lot of struggles. Now, do you look at this and are you operating under the idea of Tua still being here, or do you think that this is going to be a Deshaun Watson trade eventually?
I ultimately think this pick ends up with Houston. I think that Miami pulls the trigger on a deal for Deshaun Watson. Even amidst all the allegations, all the issues surrounding him off the field, I do think that Deshaun Watson will be a Miami Dolphin. However, for this mock draft, I'm still operating like this is the Dolphins' pick here because it technically is their selection. And I'm going with Kenyon Green here, tackle out of Texas A&M. I think that they need to find someone who can play that right tackle position. If Tua Tagovailoa is their quarterback, they got to keep him upright. If Deshaun Watson's their quarterback, they got to keep him upright. Ultimately, it doesn't specifically matter. They're going to have to look for a tackle at some point or another in the draft, whether it's in round 1 or round 2, regardless of who their quarterback is.
Absolutely. And at pick number 19, we have the Atlanta Falcons. And defensively, they've had a lot of struggles so far this year. Every level of their defense seemingly can have an improvement with this pick. Where do you think Atlanta's going?
I would love to touch the defense. I think that they do need to look in that way. However, based off of who's here on the board yet, I'm going to go with Sam Howell. He has had consistent production as a 3-year starter for the Tar Heels. I think that he can be the long-term heir apparent to Matt Ryan. He's got the weapons in place with Calvin Ridley. You've also got Cordero Patterson, who's broken out under Arthur Smith. Kyle Pitts, of course, is there, the first ever tight end to post 100-yard weeks back-to-back as a rookie. That is phenomenal production there from the skill positions. Now you bring in Sam Howell. You can ease him into the process. You don't have to force Matt Ryan out. Sam Howell can learn for a year. Otherwise, Sam Howell, he's ready to take the job if it's there for him. This gives them a little bit of flexibility at that quarterback spot, allows you to save money in some areas that they haven't been able to historically, and then maybe you touch the defense in free agency and rounds 2 through 7.
And now here at pick 20, we have the New Orleans Saints, who this offseason are going to definitely struggle with money. They've done a lot of different things to help try to aid some cap relief for this team. And is this selection here going to be a money-saving move, or is this just a pure football fit?
This is a pure football move for me. I think that they need someone who can help them in the red zone and also be a big wideout for them on the outside. And that's going to be, of course, wide receiver here, Treylon Burks out of Arkansas. Had 3 touchdowns in the first half this past Saturday and has been playing great football as of late for the Razorbacks. I think he's going to continue rising up boards. He's the first wide receiver off the board here in this draft. First time we've seen that all year. I think that he could be a very, very nice weapon for New Orleans. We've looked at some of the Ohio State wideouts for them historically. However, I think Treylon Burks, his recent play propels him to wide receiver 1 at this point of the mock. However, I think it's very congested.
And at pick number 21, we have the Cleveland Browns, and the Cleveland Browns have had, once again, an up and down season. They've dealt with some injuries as well. Now, this is kind of an interesting point here. do we think that they definitely need to look on that defensive side of the ball, in particular the D-line? It's been a popular edge spot here, but are you kind of keeping that same trend, or are we going elsewhere?
Based off of what we've seen go off the board, I don't necessarily love the value here at 21. However, with only one wide receiver off the board, I especially love the value, what they could get at that wide receiver position. I'm specifically talking about Chris Olave, who I think is a phenomenal grab into this offense, can really stretch the ball downfield for an offense. And I think that's key because I do not see Odell Beckham Jr. being a Cleveland Brown next season. I think Jarvis Landry really good underneath routes. You have Austin Hooper there, who's a very nice security blanket. David Njoku offers some athleticism. Now you get someone who can stretch the ball downfield a little bit more for Baker Mayfield, help open up that run game, maybe keep a safety over the top a little bit more frequently against you. Kareem Hunt, Nick Chubb are going to smile at this pick because Chris Olave is going to help their offense a lot.
At pick number 22, we have the LA Chargers. They have far exceeded expectations so far this season. However, it's a contract year for Mike Williams, and it's very possible they don't get a deal done. Do you think if that happens that they would opt to take a wide receiver?
I do actually, and after seeing a wide receiver go 20th overall, we're seeing a little bit of a run here because we're going back to back to back at the wide receiver position. And this one is one of your favorites here, Austin. Drake London out of USC. Mike Williams, a big-time receiver, can make plays over the top, and Drake London at 6'5" is going to be able to fulfill that missing element. Mike Williams is going to have a hefty price tag now this offseason with his recent play. I'm not exactly sure what he's going to expect based off of his, rookie contract, how he played throughout the duration of that. But recent play, he's going to want a lot of money, and I don't see the Los Angeles Chargers being the team to open up the book for him to pay that type of money. Drake London instead is the pick here. 22nd overall, phenomenal player, stays in the state of California as well. I like this a lot for the Chargers.
Very similar player types. You are replacing Mike Williams with Drake London. Very, very similar in that regard. Pick 23, we have the Baltimore Ravens, who just suffered a loss to the interdivision rival Cincinnati Bengals. Not a lot of people were expecting the Bengals to go into Baltimore and get the win. There's definite needs for this Baltimore team that's really, really banged up right now. But when they are healthy, there are still some clear needs for this team. What are you going to address with this pick?
I'm operating under the idea that next season, when they get J.K. Dobbins back, they are going to run the football down everybody's throat in the NFL because that's what they do best. This year, Latavius Murray coming into week 7 was only averaging 3.6 yards a carry, and it was similar numbers for the rest of that backfield, whereas in 2020, J.K. Dobbins averaged 6 yards a touch out of the backfield. He needs someone in front of him to help block and pave the way a little bit. And I'm actually going to the University of Minnesota here. Daniel Falele, 6'8", 400 pounds. I know another one of your favorite prospects in the draft here, Austin. He is going to be phenomenal in the run game. Maybe he'll have some issues in pass protection, especially with edges who have elite bend coming off with good speed. However, in the run game, he is going to maul, and it's going to be a problem playing against the Baltimore Ravens against that front five offensively.
Now, this is the highest that Falele has gone in mock draft, so you heard it here first from the Wizard himself. Pick 23, Daniel Falele. At pick number 24, we have the Tennessee Titans. They just defeated the Kansas City Chiefs. So this team definitely up and down this year. They lost to the Jets. They beat the Chiefs and Bills. So it's hard to pinpoint where they actually are at as a team. So for the Tennessee Titans, could you see them helping aid the run game once again and selecting an offensive lineman?
I definitely am leaning that way. I do want to quickly touch on Caleb Farley's injury. Of course, question marks of if that's an ACL long-term, what that's going to do for his development. So I did consider Trent McDuffie here to help along that cornerback room. However, I'm going with Ike Ekwonu here out of NC State. He's going to help them a lot in that run game. I think he can also serve as a viable pass protector for Ryan Tannehill. And I just think they need a little bit of help in that offensive front. I think that if they put a little bit more first-round investment into that team and really hit on a pick, of course, Isaiah Wilson was not the type that they wanted to go with, but Ike Ekwonu, I think you get it right here. You come in, you help Derrick Henry. He's aging a little bit. Of course, it doesn't show in his production at this point. However, you need to be thinking about that long-term, trying to keep him upright, try and make him not have to break so many tackles, and Ekwonu helps with that here.
Absolutely. Arguably the best run defender or run blocker in the entire class. At pick 25, we have the Las Vegas Raiders. Now that John Gruden's gone, there's going to be a different direction for this franchise. Who knows what Mike Mayock's future is still with the team, if he still remains interested in staying around. But for this team, they completely revamped their offensive line. Do you think that they very well could look back to that O-line, or do you think they've played well enough to ensure to run it back next season?
Based off their 5-2 record and kind of the performance we've seen from them at this point, I think that they're going to be fairly confident with what they've built. And I think the one thing with Mike Mayock, which I'm assuming he's going to be the GM making this selection when I'm making this pick for them, is there's no denying he looks at big-time schools, big-time programs when making selections. And the key thing that he's been trying to address in his tenure as Raiders GM is that wide receiver room. He's getting great value here with Garrett Wilson falling all the way down to 25. This is a home run pick for the Las Vegas Raiders. He comes in, offers very, very good help out of the wide receiver room. You have him, Henry Ruggs, Brian Edwards now with a healthy Darren Waller. You have a lot of weapons there for Derek Carr, and that's just in the passing game.
At pick 26, we have the Buffalo Bills, and the Buffalo Bills could definitely look a couple of different directions, maybe look for a little more dynamic running back, but they do like the two-headed monster that they have there currently. Maybe they also look into that secondary. Do you think the secondary, in particular corner, is a big need for them?
Cornerback is a big need for them. I think that they need a cornerback too. We talked about that all last draft process, and there's two here that really jump out to me. Trent McDuffie, who's a little bit smaller, doesn't necessarily play with the most size at the position, but very, very good football player. And then there's also Darian Kendrick here, who I know his rank's way lower. Last year, if he would have came out of Clemson, he would have been a first-round pick. I know his production hasn't been where it should be in order to be a first-round pick this year for Georgia. However, he is still a 6-foot corner, prototypical length, size, moves very, very well, has had a ton of history in big games and has played well in those big games. I'm going with Darian Kendrick here for Buffalo. I think that's a phenomenal grab. I don't care where his rank is on PFF. Remember, they didn't have Desmond Ridder on here, so I don't really care where his rank is. I think that he can play up to this first-round level, and I think the Bills get a really good one here.
Now we have the Cincinnati Bengals, who shocked everybody and beat the Baltimore Ravens in Baltimore. And this team is looking very, very good. Obviously, the Jamar Chase pick is really paying off from last season. Offensive line, a major concern for the team heading into the year. They have definitely played better than most people thought. Do you still want to look along that offensive line?
I do still want to look at the tackle spot specifically. I'm not necessarily in love with the idea of Riley Reiff being a long-term piece on an offensive line. And I think they're young. I think that they have some pieces along that offensive line that are definitely in place to stay. However, I'm going with Nicholas Pettit-Freer here out of Ohio State. Stays in state with the Cincinnati Bengals. Very, very good in pass protection. I think that's one of the key elements to his game that I think is really going to help Cincinnati. They need someone who's going to keep Joe Burrow upright. We've seen how dominant Jamar Chase can be. He's on pace for over 1,800 yards receiving this year. That's how good of a prospect he is. That's why all last year, Austin, you had mocked him over Penei Sewell for Cincinnati. He's that kind of beast. Now you get a little bit more help along the offensive front, and you're looking at one of the better offenses in all of football.
Now we have the Dallas Cowboys, and this team is looking phenomenal so far this season. One of the big question marks going into last year was, are they going to be okay without drafting the corner, right? So they go Micah Parsons. They're doing that for money-saving reasons. Now they have another opportunity to draft a corner, but that's kind of dwindled down so far from what we have left of these prospects. So could you still see them dipping into that corner pool?
I do still see them going there. Trayvon Diggs played very, very well this year, especially when it comes to taking away the football. He's been the best in the NFL at generating takeaways. However, he's still not the most consistent in coverage, is prone to getting beat, and I also think Anthony Brown is not a cornerback 2-level player in the NFL. They go with Trent McDuffie here. The only knock on him really is that size. If he was 6 feet tall, he would probably go in the top 15 of the draft. That's really the only concern that I have for him. Austin, you've expressed some of your concern on him as well for that reason. However, very good football player, comes into Dallas, can be that cornerback too on day one, and I think offers pretty nice prototypical man-to-man coverage skills, even at a non-prototypical size.
At pick 29, we have the Green Bay Packers, who just continue to keep rolling. This team, we don't know the future of who's really going to be here, but we know Aaron Rodgers will likely not be. So now Jordan Love is going to be your quarterback. Do you get him another weapon?
That's going to be really the big question here, because Brian Gutekunst has shown in his time as GM for Green Bay that he hasn't cared about taking a wide receiver in round one for Aaron Rodgers. Now, it's possible that he could be trying to show up Aaron Rodgers, and first draft with Jordan Love being his long-term starter says, yeah, I'm going to take a wide receiver for him. However, I'm going to hold closer to his real draft history, what he looks to do. and that's not take a wide receiver. He's going to look along the offensive tackle spot, take Charles Cross here out of Mississippi State, and he's going to look for some long-term help on the offensive line for Jordan Love. I think one thing about Jordan Love that not a lot of people are talking about at this point is not only, are you losing some of the arm talent maybe, and some of the ability and plays that Aaron Rodgers makes, but you're also going to lose some of that IQ up front. You're going to lose someone who's going to be able to diagnose blitzes, and like any young quarterback, he's going to have some of those struggles. You have to find good pass protectors for him, and guys who can help, really just in the blocking game in general. Charles Cross does that here, 29th overall.
At pick 30, we have the Detroit Lions, and the Detroit Lions here have this pick from the Matt Stafford trade. There's an interesting prospect, couple of interesting guys still on the board. Let me know your thoughts on where you think they're going to go here.
Having already taken Kayvon Thibodeau, I don't see them double dipping at that edge position. I think there's a lot of strong edges still out here, and I think day 2 of the NFL draft is going to be very, very competitive in the top half, trying to get up for one of these edges. However, I just don't see them going there 30th overall. In fact, I have them looking into the secondary and trying to improve their safety play a little bit. They go with Jordan Battle here out of Alabama. I think he can come in, help them quite a bit in both the run and pass game, and I think offers pretty good athleticism as well for the position. Not an elite athlete, not someone who's going to absolutely flash off the screen for you, but someone who I think can come in for the Lions and be a very nice playmaker on day 1.
At pick 31, we have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who absolutely steamrolled the Chicago Bears in that afternoon game. Now, for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they want to ensure they are protecting Tom Brady. There's a couple of offensive linemen that they can upgrade over. Is that the direction you want to go with this team?
I think that they do have a really, really good opportunity here to improve the offensive line. There's Darian Kinnard out here, Jackson Kirkland as well, 2 guys I would consider. I also want to highlight really quickly the running back position, which I think is an area of potential need for this team. I think that with who they have on their roster currently, a guy like Isaiah Spiller or maybe Breece Hall, who can really hit the long ball in the run game, could provide some upside for them. However, like you said, Austin, I'm going at the tackle spot. Darian Kinnard here from Kentucky, just too good to pass up, 31st overall, and fits their needs.
At pick number 32, we have the Arizona Cardinals, undefeated so far this year, but they can definitely improve this roster, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Is there a glaring weakness that you want to address?
I think that they just go a little safe here, go along the offensive line and take Jackson Kirkland here. I don't think that there's anything to this pick that's going to wow anybody, but when you have a really good football team, your cornerback play's been very strong this year, even though it's, I would say, somewhat surprising. They've been clicking on all cylinders. I think you just look to improve up front, see if Jackson Kirkland can help you in the run game and pass game a little bit, and develop into being a long-term starting tackle for you. Kyler Murray's really good when he's running around. However, you don't want him to have to be doing that all the time to be successful. Kirkland can come in and help you out in that area.
And that is going to conclude our NFL first round mock draft. Thank you so much for tuning in. Hit that subscribe button if you are new to the channel. Also, please leave a like if you did enjoy the content in this video. Thanks so much for tuning in and watching our videos. We do appreciate all the support, and we will catch you guys in our next video.